after collapse of the Soviet Union, Finland was careful, and there was still fear of Russia and what the collapse of that empire meant. There were preparations for a big invasion of refugees and or some military problems, and there was some big exercises in Lapland in 1992 summer, and some of the army people were already like in high spirits that, well, soon we have to put in practice what we have been learning or been trained for. But so they stepped up the preparations and readiness of the army. But that there was no idea of allying to the NATO or anything like that. It was all based on our own defense. And the problem of this NATO has always been that Finland is still now, until now, our army is like transcripts. It's like compulsory. There's a period of army. Everybody has to. All the male should actually nowadays there's more easy to get exempted from the army but service, but it's like conscript army. So this poses some weird issues. I mean, this is not that easy to send these people who are taken to some wars which may be to defend an alliance which somehow is supposed to defend us. As a part of that alliance, we should be protected. That's the logic of this NATO. So Finland, when most of the countries in Europe, Sweden, all these, Germany, they disarmed and neglected army for some extent, and Finland still kept the army. The size is. We have these reserves who had this training. They are like ready, so they've been, and there's some for some couple of hundreds of thousands. Could be within quite short notice, could be called to arms. But anyway, this is has been reasonable as a defense. Of course, considering the location of Finland, and this army is reasonable that if we didn't irritate the Russians or cause some problems to them, we would be safe with that. So it's not like a pushover. So I mean, Finland could at least delay and cause heavy losses to Russians, and we are not in a position to. It's only our brains, which could be of value to Russia. It's not for some technology. But if these people left the country as a result of an invasion, so what they would get forest and some scenery, lakes, so maybe some infrastructure. But anyway, it's not would not give them resources like oil or gas or something of that type, or coal or some like metals like in Ukraine. It's more valuable for them. So even they have themselves already enough, so I'm not saying that they are in need of that, but so this is the location. So Finland well, we had a pact with Germany during the Second World War. Not in the beginning, as there was this pact between Russia, Soviet Union, and Germany, Ribbentrop and Molotov Pact, which gave Russians and or Soviets right to invade Finland and the Baltic states and part of Poland, and Germany came from the other side to Poland. Well, after that, so now we have our history, and after this end of the Cold War, Finland became like there was some trauma from the Second World War and its defeat, and we had to pay heavy compensation, and which people felt were unfair. But because of the Winter War, I personally I believe that this Winter War was at that time, because there's this pact with Germany and Russia, so we're not giving our land to fascists or Nazis to invade Soviet Union and Leningrad at that time. So that's not. So most of the Finns consider that a heroic, and as a result of the Winter War, Finns were more united, because most people sensed, even we had our civil war before, so most of the Reds and the socialists, they didn't their eyes opened that the Soviet Union, they talk about peace, but then they come with their arms, with the fake excuses and claims that Finland started. And it didn't make sense to Finns that how we are like 4 or 5 million people, how would that attack 200 million and alone. That but of course then there's this continuation war which started 1941, and Finland was like a partner with Germany. There was some idea to capture some lost territory together with Germany. Of course, some of the soldiers, they didn't feel nice when they crossed the border, and Finland moved to the areas of the Soviet Union. Of course, there is like a Finnish-speaking people, and there was this romantic ideas of this Aunus and all these areas, which some of the Finnish famous writers went there, you know. People were not like receiving the Finns arms open. Some old woman there, you know, they may understand some type of Finnish, but they were looking like, you know, these men, who are they, and are they raping us, or they didn't. Then they realized that that had been a myth. They already had lived with the Russians actually always, and then they used to already that Soviet system. So I mean, there was this. But now what I have noticed among the many Western analyzers and who, there's this Russian narrative now that Finland was culprit of this, or partner of the siege of Leningrad, that will let our land to be used by the German army, and as a result of it, we are like we are guilty of this the death of 1 million Soviet citizens. Well, for us, we were always told that Mannerheim was old Russian general. He had been very famous and respected in Russia, Tsarist, loyal to Tsar, and then he moved to Finland because his origin is. He didn't speak that good Finnish, but his origin is in Finland. So that he knew the Russians, and he had somehow that because of him Finland did not cut the supply line, the Murmansk railway, which helped the Russian war efforts. That because we were like seeing already what will happen after, and afraid. I mean that Finnish people were told that we were like too nice with the Soviets. That actually we should have helped the Germans more, but we didn't. So we have this type of narrative in our country that Finland was not involved in any atrocities, or it's always. Of course, people, maybe if there was some Russian Soviet prisoner, they capture some soldiers, and if they found women there, maybe some men raped. It happens everywhere. But of course, the moral high ground. Of course, there was this, that time people are more religious, and all they somehow believed in God, and there was this distinction that the Soviet Union was like a godless nation, and Finland is protected because we are strong belief in God. And well, anyway, but nowadays this seems to be the idea which in the 1990s, this one famous general Andrew, who was like related to Mannerheim also. He was not general during the war, but after that he became an infantry general, and he started to propagate the idea since the end of the 80s, 1990s, that Finland did not lose the war. It was like this 1944 was like a victory, like defending our land. It's like, it's the truth, our front was about to collapse, and then this German they sent the very best pilots to Finland and Air Force, and with these Tuga planes. Some of the Finns, they told the story that when these Germans came to Finland, the pilots, they said that somebody had already tools, I don't know, screwdriver or something in his mouth when he jumped out from the cockpit, and he started directly assembling the weapons or these bombs to his plane, and they said that it didn't take 1 hour, half an hour to 1 hour, and they already went on their mission to the front and bombed. So some of the German pilots, they say they saw already Finnish people like running. Then they came like the last moment. So if that front had collapsed and Russia had broken through and occupied Finland, Helsinki, so then our position would have been different. We would have been like the Baltic states and next to Soviet Union. So we saved our independence, but we were defeated. But because of this heroism our soldiers showed at the face of this last phase, there was some kind of new spirit that Finland actually won. Russia could not win us. They were of course hurried to move to Berlin, and we were safe because we managed to hold on to our positions long enough, and then we shoot for peace in the best possible way under the conditions. So this was one of the change. I mean, during the Cold War, when Finland was playing for licking the Soviets' backs or some, uh, and there were Finland zero, something Germans called Finlandization, that you know, pleasing the aggressor, or somehow many were disappointed that how come we could have such good relations with the Soviets, because we had been a heroic nation who had been very brave during the war, and suddenly our politicians were praising the good relations and so on. So that was, but there was it was acknowledged by the politicians and by the people that we lost the war, and we were giving very heavy penalties for that. We had to pay this war, this lot of ships and all kinds of industrial things we had to send to Soviet Union. That was, and also our president was sent to prison. He was wartime president who, with his personal signature, he managed to get some help from the Germany, which helped us a lot. And many things happened, but it was known by the Finns that we lost, and that was the last chance, you know. And everybody knew what could have happened. But in the 90s, after the Soviet Union collapsed, then they became the feeling that Finland could have done something else. We could have actually we won, and Russia should know we killed 1 million Russians or something like that, died in the Finnish front. Some of them for various reasons, but I mean it was not a success for Soviet Union. That was acknowledged by Stalin already. He was embarrassed by this war in Finland. Winter War was not, and even still now, I think the Russian historians, they don't see it as like a heroic chapter in their history. It was like a brutal invasion, and as it's known with to the historians also in Russia, that they already had a pact with the Nazi Germany. So it was not like they came to Finland to stop the Nazi invasion, which came after 2 years. So maybe they were anticipating something like that and taking the positions and depth. They needed some depth to this defense of Leningrad. But you know, there was some. I've listened to some Russian historian in the University of Turku who had studied the archives. They said there were some papers that they were planning that it's cheaper to occupy Finland because of the ports and airports, and they were like seeing that like I don't know if the rumors that Soviet Union would have attacked Germany anyway. I don't know that at one point there was this type of story also that they excused the Germans that they attacked before the Russians or Soviets would attack them. But anyway, they were looking for, there were maps, and also there was one plan that they should have gone north of this Finland, and even north of Sweden. They had some maps of that area, but because there was this railway line, so they were thinking that to cut Finland in half first from that, but they were faced severe resistance, and they were defeated in the beginning, and also winter the conditions were not favorable. Many of these forces were from Ukraine or somewhere like that. and their equipment and the clothing was not up to the standards or conditions of. But it's not extremely cold the first winter, but anyhow, and they were not motivated. Maybe they were expecting, they were not prepared for resistance. They were thinking that the Finnish were seeing them as liberators. But anyway, there's continuation war, and the end of it, it became like the mood changed in the 1980s and 1990s that Finland actually won and Russia could not do anything to Finns because we are like a warrior nation and all these things. So the become like a hubris of the people and joining of this European Union. Of course, there were some of the older generation who were careful and they were not underestimating the Russian. And of course, there is some people who were already in favor of joining NATO in the 1990s, but like you know, they were sure that Russia will rise again one day and can be a threat. But I mean, we have also that behind this good relations in the 1945 to or 44 to 91, this Cold War time, there was the history in the Finland was part of Russia during the 19th century. 1808-9, Finland was annexed to Russia. So that was a period when Finland learned to coexist with this. We had some autonomy, even our own currency and many things which some of the Russians didn't like. But many of our elite appealed to the Tsar, and Finland was in the beginning was like a gate to the west for the Russian, and they get the Swedish science because when Finland was annexed, there was one of the maybe 3 universities of Sweden. One was located in Turku, the western coast of Finland, and Russia was happy to have this Swedish science. So they were giving very high salaries to our professors and during that time, and they were like kind, and it's not too many robbing and raping when they annexed Finland in 1809. So that made Finns to somehow accept the rule. But then it was known like a legend in the like 1830s and 1860s when there was some skirmishes or clashes with Poland or wars, that Finland did not make any problem for Russia. So there's like a saying from the Tsar that leave Finland alone because it's the only part of my empire which never gave me any problem. So that was like one of the model during this new reality. But actually this independence was quite young when it was only 21 years. 1917-18 Finland became independent from Russia as a result of collapse of Russia and this revolution. So after 20 years they tried to capture the land back. So there were still the old generation who were like seeing this like this. Kekkonen was a bit younger, but this older generation, they remembered the time of the autonomy under Finland as part of Russian Empire. They were like looking for a bit different position. not like neutrality, and somehow accepting that Finland is under the sphere of influence of Russia, but they would like to defend the independence of and autonomy of Finland. But Kekkonen, he saw the situation differently. He was like building the identity that Finland is an independent nation and used that neutrality, like that Finland was like neutral in the international arenas, United Nations, everywhere. Did not condemn the USA, but did not condemn the Soviet Union, as opposed to Swedish neutrality, which was like condemning USA for Vietnam and all these things, and then the Soviets for whatever their misbehavior. So Finland had to be careful, but this this Kekkonen, he put effort, more emphasis on independent foreign policy, and he led the Russians maybe more inside the Finnish society than the older generation would have done. They would have kept the Finns their right to decide their own things, and but at the same time they would have acknowledged the position, like maybe they under this type of thinking Finland could have fallen to the category of Eastern Bloc, possibly. But anyway, so coming back to this 1990s, this history books used to be like propaganda. When I went to school, there was in the 70s and 80s that Finnish people were like thanking the Soviet Union in the history books, that because of these payments we had to pay after the war, our industry developed. It's partly true, but to thank Soviets for that is something. But later on, it must be admitted that Finland benefited from the trade with Soviet Union, and especially when there was this price of oil went up, Finland exchanged. There was a bilateral trade. It was barter trade in reality. There was some payment system, and when the oil prices went up, so Finland found all kinds of things to sell to Soviet Union, and also it helped, if like shipbuilding, if it was difficult to get contracts in the West, so the politicians could push, that Soviets would buy some icebreakers or something, some ships. So there was always that channel, and also some many construction projects and all kinds of things gave job to the people in the eastern part of Finland, and many things, Finns had to learn to operate in different cultures and in Soviet Union. So it had some advantages even because Finland, it was not in the 1970s, it was not that easy to sell Finnish products in the West. We had some paper machines, something, some shipbuilding, wood, but what is that? It's not really technology, if you sell paper, and paper is like selling to England and even USA, but that's like bulk product. It's not that does not require so much. Of course, there's some know-how, but I mean, it's not. You don't need to brand, like Nokia was known for car tires and boots, rubber something like that. And then like all kinds of things. Then they went into electrical things and then electronics. So and even in the beginning, Nokia they did not sell Finland. They moved some of they had some computer section which was based in Sweden. That was disaster, and they bought all kinds of television companies around Europe. But they sold themselves in the 1980s as a Scandinavian company or something, and they did not correct. Many thought that it's a Japanese company. So Finland was not a place to sell high-end brands to the West. Like Sweden already had like musical industry, all Volvo cars. So we were not in that position in the 1970s and 80s. So 1990s, this Finland started to be known for Nokia and some high-tech companies, and later on like high education standards or something like that. So it came, so those people, this new generation who grew up in these chances of European Union and Finland, welcomed everywhere and had some high reputation in social statistics and many things. We were not so much behind Sweden anymore. Like in the 70s, when our government, they used to send all kinds of unemployed people to Sweden. They just paid the ticket to boat, go to Sweden. If you didn't find a job, it became a criminal or some live on social benefits in Sweden, which was not possible in Finland in the 1970s, 80s. End of 80s it started a bit, but it's not. That time was economy doing so well, so there was no reason to live on social benefits. But so then the idea of cutting the Russia, and we had to also, because the trade was it was bilateral trade, and because of Soviet Union's collapse, it discontinued, and Finland had to find new markets somewhere else. So, and also we were in the positions that we managed to survive somehow. It was that big recession in Finland, but so that generation, they thought that we can manage without any relation with Russia, or link our relation with Russia to the European Union. But now, because European Union cut relations with Russia and with these sanctions, this NATO does not bring any help for this situation, but somehow this identity crisis, you could call, that made us to apply for this membership. And also you have to remember that this is not popular. This this NATO was not only 20 to 30% of the population supported the idea, until 21. So the lesson from the Second World War was that better we are not causing problems to the Russians. So this small clique managed to scare hell out of the population, and suddenly they got these numbers that 70% of the Finns support are in favor of joining NATO. So, and then I could sense also that some of my friends, they started to, oh yeah, maybe because of this and this. There was some, but it was speculated. It's not, I don't believe it was honest in the beginning. Then it somehow, and also the president was pushing the idea, suddenly this Niinistö, that we should join, and traveled and lobbying with these American presidents and all kinds of things. So it's true, maybe closer to half of the population maybe are in favor or were in favor just in March, May, but April. But this clique who were pro NATO and this, they saw the chance, and of course there is no referendum. The support of the idea is not. If you look to the members of parliament who voted for NATO, I think in the parliament, which was elected like a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, was I don't think there was perhaps 50 out of 200 supported NATO, less than 100 anyway, less than half. So it's not. It has not been. In this way, it's not democratical decision. Suddenly, their heads were turned, and they voted in favor of submitting the application. This was under the panic and hysteria, which was spread by the intentionally, because these people who wanted Finland to join NATO, they thought that this is the only chance, to pump up the numbers. That because there's this requirement by NATO that should be most of the people support, and this had been one of the reasons why Finland did not apply for NATO before, because it was not possible. It was not supported. Anyway, there's this another question is that there's the internal struggle in Finland, that these people who had links with the old policy of good relations with Soviet Union and later on with Russia, they were in positions, and they were like protecting each other because it was widely spread in Finland. In the end of 1990s, we received some reports from Stasi Germany, Western Germany, but these Stasi archives with some names of top Finnish politicians who had been registered by the Stasi as their informants or some, not agent, but somehow some East German diplomats had contacts with, or Stasi operatives had contacts with them. So these files were kept secret, was not spread to people, because it seems that it included some high-level politicians and ministers. And anyway, this group was like challenged by the pro-Western people, but they had like a long history in the politics, and they managed to keep Finland like, they look through the national interest, I would say. It's not that they are like, that's why they didn't change, if they had been socialist and communist, they were disappointed with the collapse of Soviet Union. This is a minority. It was not maybe 10% of Finns maximum who had been like pro-Soviet Union with the ideological twist and all these things. But this battle inside Finland had been going on until now. So we had some of the who are now like 70 years old, they had to change their mind. They were such a heavy pressure was put on them that they already, okay, let's join NATO, like They could not hold their own old position anymore. That Finland, and then we went all the way with this. We they were seeing that Finland should be seen as a Scandinavian nation, which was the old neutrality. We joined the Swedish neutral position. Now, with this NATO, Finland, even they try to go together with Sweden now to give an idea like that. But by joining NATO, Finland suddenly becomes like a Baltic state. And these Baltic states had been parts of Soviet Union till 91. So this is why that was one of the reasons that Finland is not joined the NATO, because the Baltic states joined. So from the NATO perspective, Finland maybe needed to, with our conscript army, maybe needed to defend these Baltic states, because our population is bigger than, or more maybe the size of those all Baltic states together. So and our army is somehow, because our economy has been in much better shape for already 30, 40 years, so we have had money to purchase some US and Western weapons and fighter planes and something like that. So we have some economic resources, and Sweden even more. That's why they would like Sweden to join also. And the other thing is what has shaped this environment is that in the 1990s there were Sweden and Germany, and until the Iraqi war 2003, German Joschka Fischer and many, there's not that much support for United States. So within the last 10-15 years, all these exercises in Syria, Libya, all European Union, Germany and Sweden, they've lost their independent identity. They become subservient to the US one world. It's come through the ideological like values and human rights and minorities and whatever, you know. It's it has come through the back door, and their media is not independent anymore. It's like part of the so-called Western view. So that has blinded and made Finland even the position had changed. And I think it's Niinistö, when he decided that Finland should apply for this NATO, he used Germany as an example, because Germany started to send weapons to Ukraine and all these things. That the change in the Germany was one of his like deciding moments. But anyway, I think that some of the people already start to see that and even regret that. We don't know. I mean, this Lithuania is part of European Union, and these sanctions, they are like, you know, blocking Russian. These sanctions, this is not international law. It's the law of the rule. I mean, just stronger. I mean, if somebody imposes sanctions and follow, it's just something extra. It's the backing of the power of USA and NATO and European Union was behind this. It's not that that suddenly Lithuania can by herself, you know, claim something like this, but they are entitled to do. I mean, they are like somehow asked to do, as part, like a buffer of or the hard wall, to put the hard wall against the Russia, which is maybe dangerous. And also for Finland, I don't know. Because the people who were telling about this NATO, and even a head of our security police now, oh, I'm surprised that nothing happened when Finland decided to send. They were prepared that, or maybe they fool themselves, or they're not honest themselves, or they were saying that this hybrid operations with this this internet attacks, hackers, and all, like sending refugees across the border, and or something like this could happen. And they thought that Finland joined NATO and Russia would accept the reality within maybe protesting few months, and that's it. Because Finland has like fifth article, and they are protected by the US, and Russia is afraid. They thought. And I don't know if they are that afraid, because of the weapons of West is not that it's not that strong. What is in some minds. But Finland, by breaking the relations with Russians, they may be in this for years or even decades, and that's what's like this, the Cold War. Even people thought that there's this peaceful coexistence and between these different systems. We are not communist. Finland was not like the Eastern Bloc. We had all kinds of parties. Socialists were like never the majority, really majority. I mean, maybe third of the population were like social democrats, and or maybe sometimes with more with communists, but also more leftists. But this system is